Hello and welcome back to Cooking with Suzanne. Today we're going to make a dish with cabbage and pork. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is make a brine. What really helps make pork, because pork doesn't have the amount of fat that it used to have years ago and it's a lot more lean, you need something to help make it nice and juicy. And I find that the brine really brings in a lot of wonderful flavor for the pork. So let's get started with that. I have a saute, or just a little pot here, and to it I'm going to add 1 cup of water, and I will add 4 tablespoons or 1/4 cup of kosher salt, 3 tablespoons of, this is sugar in the raw. You can use maple sugar, you can do 3 tablespoons of honey, muscovado sugar, but this is sugar in the raw. I have 3 tablespoons here. I have 2 bay leaves, and I have some fresh parsley and I have some fresh thyme and some fresh parsley stems. So just a nice little small bunch is good. And then I have a teaspoon of Telecherry black peppercorn. So any black peppercorn will work very nicely here. And then 1 clove of garlic. You can just smash the garlic if you want, or I like to actually smash it and then slice it. So I'm going to put 1 head of garlic in here, just 1 clove of garlic in here, and get this on the stove. I'm going to bring it to a boil and then simmer it very low for about 8 to 10 minutes. I want all the flavor to come into the water before we go ahead and add 3 more cups of ice cold water to this brine. Okay, so let's get this on the stove. Okay, so let's get started on getting our pork roasted. And I do have a nice pork tenderloin here. And I did already put it in the brine, and I put it in the brine for about 3 hours. You can go, I wouldn't go any more than 4 hours for a pork tenderloin. For nice thick pork chops, and I'm talking about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick, you can go up to 24 hours with the pork chop on the bone. But with this pork tenderloin, I don't think it can handle a brine much more than 3 to 4 hours tops. So I will put a little bit of fresh black pepper, but I won't season it with any salt because we did put plenty of salt in our brine. So I think it's seasoned pretty well. I don't think we need to add any more salt, but I will put some pepper on top. And if you see, oh, this is important. When you do take your pork out of your brine, it is good to wash it, rinse it under cold water to get any of the brine off. You want to just kind of rinse it and then dry it on paper towel. You do need your meat to be nice and dry in order for it to sear nicely. The other thing that's important when you go ahead and sear, this particular dish you wouldn't want to sear on high because there's sugar or honey in your brine. And if you put this on high, your meat will start to burn a little too quickly. So in this case, you want to do it medium to maybe medium high. Watch it, be careful. I just don't want you to burn your meat because of the sugar content that's in here. Okay, I have a little bit of grapeseed oil that I'm going to add to my pan. It's nice and hot. In previous classes, I mentioned to you I always warm up my pan first, which I did already. I've had it on low. So now I've added the oil. I'll raise the heat to get this nice and warm. The heat is on medium high, which I think is perfect. So I'll just check to watch, make sure that the pan is ready. You do want to see a little bit of a ripple there, so let's watch for that before we go ahead and add our meat. So I do have some nice ice cold water here ready to go for our brine. When the brine comes to a boil back here on the stove, I'm going to lower it and just let that simmer for a bit. For about 8 minutes or so, okay? You see the smoke, it's starting to smoke, so I'm going to lower this and I have it on medium to medium high, and we'll put our pork right in. And all you want to do is just brown all the sides. And what I'm going to do here, at the restaurant we always finish our meats in the oven. So this is just a quarter sheet pan with a rack. I'm going to put this in the oven and get this hot. I'm not going to cook the pork in the frying pan because I don't want the pork to get a super thick crust. I want to keep it like a tenderloin, like filet mignon. You want to keep it really nice and tender. So I want to protect that tenderloin. I don't want to leave it in the frying pan. But I do want to get this heated, so I'm going to put this in the oven. I have my oven at 375 degrees. So I'm keeping an eye on the pork. It looks really good. My brine back here has come to a boil, so I can lower the heat. And we'll just set a timer for about 8 minutes. If you could do that for me, Bob, that'd be great. And I'm going to grab a cover and put a cover on the brine in the back. And the reason why I'm doing that is I don't want the water to evaporate because then it'll become too salty. So if you cover it and put it on low, your water will not evaporate, okay? All right, let's get rid of this for now. And we can talk about the cabbage. I have a green cabbage here. If you have access to Savoy cabbage, it's wonderful. This is just a regular green cabbage. It's a small head of cabbage, which is more than enough. And I would say for 4 people, this is plenty. I have some diced onion, just 1 medium onion diced, 1 clove of garlic, and I happen to have a couple of slices of cooked bacon in the refrigerator, and I do have a little bit of bacon fat. I think that it would taste delicious with the cabbage. Let's take a look at the pork to make sure it's doing well, make sure I have it on the right heat. So let me just take a quick peek here. Oh, it looks wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick, hopefully you can see this. Can you see how it's browning very nicely? All right, I'm going to put it back on. Yeah, good. So, 1 small head of cabbage, 1 medium onion, 1 clove of garlic. If you happen to have some leftover cooked bacon, all the better, but you don't need to. Another nice ingredient, especially in the fall and winter, would be to put some diced apple in here. Pork and fruit love one another. This is a little bit of bacon fat. I always save my bacon fat, and so I'm going to put a tiny bit of bacon fat into my pan is nice and warm. I'm going to use my bacon fat to saute my onions. And you could even put a little bit of the bacon fat in here too for the pork, which would be really nice. So let's throw a little bit in there too. Let's see how that's doing. You want to make sure that you can hear it cooking. You don't want it too quiet. If it gets too quiet, that means that your pan's not hot enough. That's looking pretty nice. So we're going to just leave it there. I think because I put a little bit of cold fat in there, it got a little quiet. So I'm just turning it up just a tiny, tiny bit. All right. So let's put this over here and get our pan a little warmer. I have my bacon fat in here. Get the pan up a little bit, and we'll start with the onions. We're going to saute these onions for about 4 minutes. Then we'll add our garlic. Then we'll put in our cabbage. It's good to always have a little bit of stock or water on hand. I think you do need to make sure that the cabbage is nice and moist, and it does need a little bit of liquid in there to cook. Cabbage doesn't take very long. This shouldn't take more than, about 8 minutes or so. All right, I'm going to look at the pork one more time and see how that's doing. Oh, it looks great. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it on its side, get a little bit of color on each side. And then it's going to be ready to go into the oven. All right. So one thing that's important to know about pork tenderloin is that there's a silver skin. on a pork tenderloin, and I'm not talking about the fat. The fat does melt, and if you didn't take the fat off, it will melt, and it's actually flavorful. The silver skin, however, there's always one piece on each tenderloin. You want to take a thin knife and actually remove that silver skin, because it does not melt, it does not cook, and if you put that in your mouth, you'll think that you have a tough piece of meat in your mouth, but it's the silver skin. It's not flavorful. Okay, so this is looking really nice. I think the pork is in great shape. I'm just kind of browning a little bit on the edge. I would put it in at 375 for about 7 minutes. Turn it over for another 7, and then you can start checking the temperature on it. It's nice to have a good thermometer in the house so that you can check your meat. You can also check by using your hands, but it's far more accurate if you have a thermometer. So here's our nice pork tenderloin ready to go into the oven. Okay, our pan's nice and hot, so let's throw in our onion. And here we definitely would like to salt as we go, but let's get the onion going first for about a minute. So here we go. And I think our brine is almost done. This dish would be very good also if you wanted to cook some potatoes, dice them, and then stir fry them, and then add it to your cabbage. It would be very good. And we're going to make a very nice topping as opposed to a sauce. At the restaurant, we always did a lot of beautiful sauces, but sauces are very time consuming. And this is a nice little topping. Here we go. And so here is our brine. And to the brine, we'll add 3 cups of ice cold water. What's very important for you to know is that you can never put raw meat into any hot liquid. So this brine needs to be nice and cold before you go ahead and put your pork tenderloin in there, or your pork chops. So if it's not totally room temperature, you would want to put it in the refrigerator and let it completely get cold. Okay, so that's what our brine looks like. And then you would just take your pork tenderloin, put it in here. Make sure it's completely submerged. Put it in a container, something that can completely submerge it. A lot of people put it even in a Ziploc bag. You can take the liquid, put the pork tenderloin, but you need to be careful. Make sure you still have it in some kind of a container so that you don't have an accident. All right, so let's put this over here and talk about our onions. They're cooking nicely. So now they've been in my pan for about a minute or so. They're definitely starting to cook. So I will go ahead and add some garlic. And I'll season this with a little bit of salt. Bacon fat has salt in it, and so does bacon, so you want to be careful with that. You can always add a little bit. You can add as you go, but don't overdo it if you're going to add a little bit of bacon fat or bacon to this dish. Okay. I would say about another minute, I can go ahead and put in this beautiful bacon. This was just about 2 slices of bacon. And then we can add our cabbage. And that is all we need to do for this part of the dish. All right, so now we have our cabbage. And I'm going to go ahead and put in the cabbage. And this is just a nice small head. If you can't get one, if you're going to get a medium to large, just use half of it. Okay. Okay, you want to shrink the cabbage down down a little bit. This topping, it's not cooked, so it's just wonderful, and it holds pretty nicely in the refrigerator. It would go great with chicken, obviously chicken, pork. It would go great even like with a piece of fish. It would be pretty nice. Okay, so what we're going to start with is, this would be certainly, you can cut this recipe in half. This is a half a cup of toasted walnuts. I take my walnuts, put them on a sheet pan, 350 degrees, 8 to 10 minutes. You definitely want to draw out the oil for the nuts so that it's very flavorful, crunchy, and has really good taste. And then you let the nuts cool completely before you go ahead and chop them. Okay, so here's a half a cup. And to that, I have cranberries. Now, sometimes when you get a package of cranberries and you bring them home, and if you have them for a while and you're not using them, they tend to get dry and a little bit chewy. If that does happen to you, just take some hot water and put the cranberries in some hot water, and that will reconstitute the cranberry. Take them out, put them through a strainer, and then just dry them on some paper towel. And now you have really beautiful, beautiful plump cranberries, which is what you really want here. You don't want them to be hard and chewy, okay? So I reconstituted these in just a little bit of hot water. Make sure that they're completely covered for about 3 to 5 minutes until they're nice and supple, and then just pass them through a strainer and put it on some paper towel. Parsley, you can use other herbs. This is about a quarter, maybe a third of a cup of parsley. If you have other herbs coming out of your garden that you want to add here, you certainly can. Chives are, especially in the spring when they start popping up, chives would be great in here. If you want something really interesting, you could even do half parsley, half mint. And I have some freshly squeezed lemon juice. So we will put in, for this amount, let's go with about 2 tablespoons. So we'll first start with 1, and then we'll taste it. No, I think 2 for sure. So we'll go with 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And then we, of course, need to season this. Some pepper. And some salt. About, I would say, 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. Start with 1/4 teaspoon, and then you can always add more. I'm going to check the cabbage. It's doing very well. Okay, so there's about, I'm going to say, maybe 1/4 cup of liquid left in the pan, and it's really, the cabbage is definitely wilting and it looks good. So I think at this point I can take the cover off and just let it cook on its own. You want the cabbage to be moist, but you're not looking to keep any liquid in the pan. You want it to be completely reduced by the time the cabbage is done. Okay, and what I have here is just some extra virgin olive oil. So we will, there's a half a cup in here, but let's start with about 1/4 cup and see how that is. You just want to mix this all together. And as I already mentioned to you, pork and fruit goes very well together. So the cranberries are really delicious with the pork. And of course, you know, you have the walnuts, have a wonderful crunch to it, which is lovely and very tasty. So I'll add a little more. And I would say that, Bob, when you take the pork out, we'll check the temperature, and then you can come on in and talk about the wine that you think would go really nicely with this dish.
Certainly.
Okay. So this is a very, I think this is a very nice dish to have for your family, to have with company. It's easy to make, but lots of good flavors going on. Cabbage is kind of like, you know, it's a simple profile you have on your plate. The cabbage is not a big flavor, but it goes very well with the pork. But then you have this very interesting topping that really does elevate the pork tenderloin dish. And the brine also gives wonderful flavor to the pork all by itself. Okay, let's take a look. I think we can use it all. So I'm going to go ahead and use the entire half a cup of oil here. Okay, this looks really nice. Now all I need to do is give it a taste and see if there's enough lemon juice. You need the acid in here. Make sure we have enough acid, and then we'll see how our topping is. Okay. Oh, I just really love this. Okay, there's plenty. I think the seasoning is great. I think the lemon juice is great. And the nuts are delicious because they're nicely toasted, which is really important. You definitely want to make sure that you toast your nuts, reconstitute your cranberries, and you will have a lovely dish. Okay. So, Bob, do you have time to come in and talk about the wine and bring that over, and I can take care of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Just going to check the cabbage.
Okay. It's actually 4. It's only
Okay.
It's only about 125.
Okay, great. Yep.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bob, and I'm back. So, let's see. We have a really nice pork dish that Suzanne surprised me with. But you know, we did this, as she said, we did this a lot at the restaurant. Maybe not the exact dish, but a lot of different pork dishes. And so, you know, it's really, it certainly is American, the type of cuisine, but it's also something that you would see in Austria, right? And so we dealt with primarily two Austrian wines, varietals. One is Lemberger, also called Frankish, and the other one is Zweigelt. And they're the two most popular red wines in Austria. And if you look at, you know, a map, you'll see that the climate or the latitude of Austria is pretty much the same as upstate New York. And so whatever grows in Austria well tends to grow in upstate New York well. So both of those, I think, are great accompaniments for the dish. Particularly, we loved Shalestone, which was a mile down the road from us. They produced the Zweigelt, and let's see, Fox Run did a Lemberger, also Red Tail Ridge did a Lemberger, and also Damiani. So if you know those names or write them down or remember them, I think any of those would be nice. The reason being is that Zweigelt and Lemberger are medium-bodied wines. They have a little bit of tannins, a little bit of spice, which is always nice. You get that?
Spice.
It's always nice, yeah.
I see two glasses over there. Let's have a taste.
Yeah. So this is actually a third one.
Aha.
Because I didn't have any of the Zweigelt or the Lemberger.
But they're great recommendations.
But they are great recommendations.
Right.
This is actually a Chateau Lafayette Cabernet Franc.
Okay.
Once again, it's 8 years old, so it's matured. It also has some nice characteristics on the acidity side, which we want. It is really aged. It's very smooth over the 8 years. Cab Franc is the varietal in the Finger Lakes. Why? Because it's easy to grow in the Finger Lakes. It's a hardy wine. Finger Lakes pretty cold climate at times, so it grows well, and whatever grows well usually grows well.
That's right.
And produces a nice wine.
So here we have our beautiful pork. Let me just.
Yeah, it's pretty thick.
Yeah, it looks lovely. Looks really nice. And of course, everyone often talk about how important it is to let your meat rest. And that's a fact. It is very important to let it rest at least for 5 to 10 minutes. It's really a nice thing to do. Ready for dinner, Bob?
I am hungry.
Okay. So, get some cabbage cabbage right here. Looks really nice, and if you notice, there's all the liquid is pretty much gone. There's just a touch left in the bottom of the pan. I think that looks pretty good. Give you a little bacon there. And I think everyone can see this beautiful cabbage. Looks really nice. Okay. And now to slice our pork. This is a nice size pork tenderloin, huh? It's beautiful. Okay.
There's enough for you?
I hope so. I hope so. All right. So we'll take about 4 slices, I think, per person. Should be very nice. Make sure it's cut through.
Oh, it's cooked very nicely.
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're going to put this lovely cranberry and walnut topping. And the oil and the lemon juice is also very tasty, so that could go around your plate. We'll just get a little bit on here. And of course, you can always bring a bowl full of this to the table, because I'm quite sure we're going to want a little bit more than what we have on our plate. Make sure your plates are always clean. And then you can always take a little drizzle of the lemon juice and olive oil and just kind of go around your plate. Okay, and here we have it. Okay. Beautiful, just beautiful. Okay, so I would say that this is probably, once again, depends on how much people eat, whether it's enough. I would say 2 pork tenderloins is enough for 4 people, with possibly a little bit extra, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah.
So I hope that you make this dish at home. It's really delicious. We certainly like it. And
remember to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd love to see you more. Maybe you'd like to see us more. And we'll be here. We'll keep doing it. And you know, when you do subscribe, they'll send it to you. You'll have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Okay.
It'll come on your computer. And it'll be like, what? This is a great day. I have my coffee. I have Suzanne. This is a great way to start the day. So cheers, everybody.
cheers, everyone. Cheers.
I'm done.